When you start thinking about designing a website, the first thing you should look at is the frameworks. The frameworks are very important. When you go to a browser, say Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, Opera, when you go to one of these browsers, you enter the URL of the website you're going to, and that browser then sends a request to the server. The server then takes all the content it's got about that web page, compiles it into an HTML format, and sends it back to the browser. And this task is repeated over and over again every time somebody comes to the website and every time you design a website. All this is done inside the programming language. So you've got these languages. The most popular are Ruby, JavaScript, PHP, and Python. So when you start looking at designing a website, when you say, okay, I'm going to build a website or I'm going to pay somebody to build a website, your first question should be, what language are they programming in and which language is the best for my project? When you start looking, each language has a framework. Ruby has Ruby on Rails, JavaScript has Express, PHP has Laravel, and Python has the Django. And these languages are designed by a group of people, some professionals in the industry that are looking at the best way to do things. And what they're building, these frameworks handle about 90% of what has to happen, leaving the developer to only deal with about 10%. Now, each language also has, like with PHP, you've got a lot of people building things out like WordPress and all this stuff. And these things are built in the language, but these websites or these platforms are only as secure as the language that they're developed in. So when you start looking at it, you say, okay, the most popular ones are Ruby, JavaScript, PHP, and Python. Well, which ones are the most secure? Well, JavaScript and PHP, JavaScript is complicated. It's a complicated language. And when they do things in Java, sometimes they require a total rebuild of the entire website. So they'll make some changes in Java, and then you'll have to turn around and to be up to date on what's happening and be with the newest and the best things that are happening with the platform. Now you've got to completely redesign your entire website to work with the newest Java. And this isn't good. This isn't something you want to do over and over again. So the frameworks matter, and also they're handling the majority of what's happening. You've got a group of people working behind the scenes, making sure that you're following the best practices and doing things in the best way and all. The frameworks would be like, if you've got Chinese, you've got English, you've got Spanish, you've got all these different languages. If you want to become a professional writer, if you want to become a professional in a language, you would go to a college. And the college isn't going to rewrite the language, but what they're going to do is they're going to teach you the best way of using the language and teach you how to get the most out of the language. And that's what these frameworks do. And some frameworks are going to be more secure than other frameworks. So because of the complexity of Java, it makes it a complex language, and the Java code is not written very neat. It's kind of all over the place. So it's very easy to make a mistake, and one mistake can get you hacked. So this makes it not very secure. Now Java's popularity is kind of skewed because you've got Oracle who's spending a lot of money on advertising and marketing Java. So it's very difficult to be able to tell how good it is or how good it's not because it's skewed because of the advertising and marketing, where the other languages don't have this going on. They're all open source, so they don't have people spending money advertising and marketing their platform. So because Java is a complex language, and because the script is written in such a way that it's difficult to look at it and see an error, it makes it hackable, and one mistake can go unseen and it can get you hacked. PHP is known. It's famous for not being secure. It's written, it doesn't even have security in mind. They don't think about security. It's up to the web developer to add in the security. So this makes it an extremely vulnerable language, and it gets hacked more than any other language, and it makes it a target for these hackers when they're looking for something to hack, because they say, okay, PHP is always making mistakes, so PHP is the way we want to go. We're going to hack into some websites. Whereas the Django and Ruby on Rails, they've got security in mind from day one. They're thinking about security. They take care of cross-scripting, cross-site request forgery, the SQL injections. All this stuff is built into Ruby and the Django. So when you start looking at, hey, for security has got to be game one, because you don't want to get hacked. One hack will put you out of business. And we've got more and more websites getting hacked now than at any other time. I mean, the hacking thing, when you see countries going to war, when you see the United States, the Ukraine, and Russia all fighting over on one side, and then you've got Israel being backed by the United States fighting with Pakistan on the other side, and Pakistan being backed by all these other different countries and everything else. The way that you fight in the background is you start hacking the other people's websites. You start hacking and looking for vulnerabilities so that you can hurt the entire economy of a country if you can start hacking their major websites and putting things out of business. So security has to be game one. So that leaves us with the Django or Python. I mean, not the Django or Python, with Python or Ruby. So you're looking and you say, okay, well, what's better, Python or Ruby? Well, Ruby hid a bunch that they call it magic, because you do something in Ruby and it just works, but you don't know why. Well, that's awesome up until there's a problem. When there's a problem, now you got to go digging into the code and trying to figure out what's going on and how it works, and trying to discover this magic that they've hidden inside the code that they don't want anybody to know about, apparently. Whereas Python is very clear, they make it very easy to understand, and they say exactly what's happening and why it's happening, and there's no magic going on. And it's a very secure language and a very fast language, because it's being built on some of the biggest websites in the world. You've got YouTube, Dropbox, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Quora, Instagram, Spotify, Reddit, Pinterest. All these websites are using Python. So Python is a well-tested language. It's a popular language. Python is the most popular language right now, especially for AI. I mean, it's the #1 language in the world for AI. It's becoming more and more popular as more and more people are looking for secure platforms to use. And as Python has become more popular, Ruby's popularity has declined. And this matters because you want the best people on the planet working on these frameworks and these back-end things that are happening behind the scenes that you don't have to worry about. And most of these people are going to go with the most popular platform. If you've got your major websites like YouTube, Dropbox, Google, Facebook, Netflix, and so on using Python, then if I'm a developer, that's the language I want to use, because there's a chance I could get a job with one of these big companies. So the best developers, or most of the time, I mean, I'm not saying that Ruby and Java and these companies don't have good developers or these languages, but most of the time your best developers are going to be trying to stay on the cutting edge. And right now that's with Python. Python's on the cutting edge with AI. It's the most used language in the world for AI. Its popularity for web development is becoming bigger and bigger, with the biggest companies in the world using it to develop their websites. So when you're looking to develop a website, all these things matter. It matters, is the language secure? Well, PHP and Java are not secure. It's easy to make mistakes. It's easy to get hacked. You're more likely to get hacked with PHP or Java than you are with Python or Ruby. But when you start comparing Python and Ruby, Python is still growing while Ruby is declining in popularity. Python is growing in popularity. So if you're a web developer, or if you're a company looking to develop a website, all this stuff matters, but it's something that most companies don't even consider. They don't even think about the back end. They say, hey, I want a website, and then they go and find a developer to build the website, and they never consider the programming language that the developer is designing and programming their website in, and how this might affect their website, their ability to handle a lot of traffic and to grow in the future. And it's something that everybody who's looking to design a website should consider. You should consider, hey, what is the best language? And then you say, okay, well, it's Python. Well, what's the best framework? Well, that's the Django. Well, who are the developers in the Django? And that's where you should start your search at. First, find out the best language, find out the best platform or the best framework, and then start looking for a developer that's developing in that framework. Because otherwise, you end up with something that's insecure, something that could get you hacked, something that could be difficult to grow on in the future, because you started off on a bad foot. And as your website grows and gets bigger, it gets more and more difficult to change platforms and frameworks. Whereas if you start off on the right foot, then you're taken care of. And by far, you've got Harvard professors, you've got all kinds of people saying point blank that Python and Django is the best setup right now for building a website. It's the most secure, it's fast, it's clean. It's the best setup for building a website currently at this time. Now, a new language could come up, or even Ruby could discover something or change something in their language, or even PHP. PHP was never written as a programming language. It's kind of a mess at the moment, but somebody could discover something or get a really good developer, but it's unlikely. And it's unlikely that Ruby is going to do something. The most likely concept is you'll have Python or a new language. At one time, there was, I can't even think of the name of it now, but there was a new language that a lot of people were looking at, and it looked like it was going to be better than Python, and could have been had they kept going with it, but it kind of teetered off and they kind of started going in some bad directions and never did a whole lot with it. But you've always got the chance that a new language is going to come up and it's going to replace the current language. But at the moment, Python and Django is the best setup for building a website. There's nothing better. There's nothing that's going to be more secure. There's nothing that's going to be cleaner. There's nothing that's easier to understand than Python and Django. So that's my 2 cents on frameworks, what you should be looking at. And I'm welcome to anybody opening up the debate or telling me I'm wrong about something. But from all of the studying I've done and I started off with PHP and WordPress. So to change languages is not something that's fun, having to relearn a whole bunch of stuff. But in the last 10 years, I've changed over to using the Django and Python because it is the best and it's the best way of doing things. And that's not in my humble opinion. That's done with testing, studying, and looking at the stats, the statistics, and trying to figure out what's the best way of building a website.